Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode here on the channel of none other than r/MaliciousCompliance. My name's Ryan, the official host here on Reddit Voice, and I look forward to bringing you guys today's top stories. Before I do, I'd really appreciate it, however, if you could hit that subscribe button, as well as make sure you got notifications turned on, that way you could stay up to date with all the latest and greatest on the channel. We'll jump into the stories in just a moment, but first, a word from our sponsors. Me! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of Reddit Voice, I come to you with a question, a proposal perhaps. We are looking to branch out, we're looking to go in different directions, we want to see what you want to see. So I ask you, my viewers, my dear subscribers, would you like to see new styles of content on the channel, perhaps even branching off of Reddit? Or is this a very specific niche that you came here for and you don't want to see a change? You want the traditional on-the-script content that you originally signed up for? Let me know in the comments of this video. I would love to see what you want to see. Now that we got that out of the way, folks, I present to you... You need scan guns? Hold on, let me get you fired first. Greetings once again, Reddit. I come to you now with what will be my juiciest story of malicious compliance yet. To give a little bit of backstory here, I have submitted several posts of MC on this subreddit from my job as a network admin at a food processing plant. While the ones I've posted have been good, I feel this one would be my magnum opus for the situation, drama, and ultimate conclusion. Without further ado, let me tell you this story. So, this started earlier today when my coworker approached me after working on the floor, informing me of how Kevin approached him in regards to scan guns that he said he needs ready by today. Scan guns that, for starters, we do not have available, but I'll explain that in a moment. First, let me tell you a little bit about Kevin so you know exactly what I'm dealing with here. Kevin is this company's plant manager, and he's, for lack of a better term, abrasive. If I can describe him better, he's the type of manager that loves to micromanage his employees while demanding the most out of everyone and anyone when he feels that he needs something important done. This is where our situation came in. Long story short, Kevin wanted the Omni scan guns that shipping mainly uses for inventory to be used by his employees to track pallets to ensure that they're accurate. Sounds reasonable, right? Well, I thought so too, even if he had that out of the blue. Well, as soon as I found out today, things soon escalated the way that they did, and while I wished things were handled better, I did things the best I could do in the end, so there aren't any real regrets here. Steering back to the situation, Kevin told my coworker that the other two scan guns, because the company only had 3, were either broken or unaccountable. That obviously didn't sit well with either of us because now, to remedy that, he wanted the scan guns we had on reserve for special projects to be used for his project. My coworker recorded the conversation, which will be used later, and asked if I could step in to talk with him. So I did. Walking to the area Kevin was in, I can see that I wasn't alone. Not that it really mattered since my business was with him. I addressed Kevin, the situation with the scan guns, and, per our IT policy, we must determine the status of the guns, why one is broken and why the other's missing. How broken's the gun? Why was there no better accountability made for our assets, etc. Kevin, in his own fashion, didn't have an answer for me, but instead told me to go ask whoever had the guns and find out why. I looked at him dead in the eyes and asked him, "Sir, isn't this your project? Shouldn't you be held accountable since the equipment is under your care at the time?" Obviously, Kevin somehow took offense to that, as he felt I was being disrespectful. How dare I put him on the spot like that? So, as always in situations like this, I decided to call my boss and inform him of the situation and ask for his input. Putting my phone on speaker, my boss informed Kevin that he cannot accommodate what he wants simply because we do not have what he wants, nor can it be done same day. Kevin then suggested the scan guns that we have reserved for the special project. My boss obviously told him no, as he'll not be allocating assets for a project to fill his needs. Kevin tried to dispute this and said that he wanted this done today, and my boss said, which I will now quote happily, "Well, if you had enough foresight to inform us of this project sooner, we would have been able to accommodate you better." Keep in mind that per our policy, should the plant have any and all projects that will involve IT-related assets and/or information, it must be coordinated with the IT department prior to deployment to ensure a seamless transition. You didn't, and therefore you have to accept the consequences, as someone in management should. Keep in mind that also prior to calling my boss, I was also recording my conversation with Kevin because anyone on this subreddit knows that CYA is absolutely essential. I then proceeded to resume recording, giving Kevin the illusion that I was hanging up with my boss, which I did, but he didn't need to know all of the deets. I then asked Kevin if there was anything else he needed from me, to which he had a bit of a grump and told me that he found me to be very unreasonable, basically saying I wasn't doing my job properly, and that if it were up to him, he would fire me on the spot for being so incompetent. Sure, Kevin, keep feeding me that delicious info. So I go back to my office to see what I can wrap up for on the day when I get a call from HR managers to report to her office. Y'all already know where this is going, but we're coming from the conclusion, so here, buckle up. So I walk in, and sure enough, Kevin's there too with a smug look on his face. My HR manager told me that Kevin informed her that he found my conduct with him to be very disrespectful, and that I refused to accommodate him with what he needed or gave a valid excuse why. It's no surprise here, but I was ready for this. Prior to even showing up, I had my coworker email me the recordings he had with Kevin, since by that time, he had left work and went home. Along with my recordings, I had what I needed, but I wanted to put the cherry on top. So after a quick text to my boss, he showed up with the most serious expression I've seen him in. Keep in mind that he was supposed to be starting his vacation, and getting dragged in for Kevin's BS did not sit well with him. So after Kevin said his piece and I said mine, the HR manager turned to me and said, "That one guy 141, do you have any evidence that dismisses Kevin's accusations?" With the most professional looking smug look on my face, I told her I did. So I pulled out my phone and pulled up the 2 recordings that both my coworker and I had with our conversation with Kevin. After listening to the conversations, Kevin's expression went from smug to as if he saw a ghost. Without much to say, the HR manager turned to Kevin and told him, "How could you say such a thing to someone here? That one guy 141 has been one of our most dedicated workers. Being in the job that he's in, he has a lot on his plate to contend with. It's also a policy that his manager enforces that they do not keep surplus equipment if it's not meant to be utilized to its fullest extent. That's why we order through them to supply exactly what we need. Your conduct towards him does not merit any actual justification through your call-out words and berating him in the manner that you took." Afterwards, I stepped out with my boss while the HR manager doles out what she felt was necessary to Kevin. Not long afterwards, he left her office without saying a word to either my boss or I. Going back into her office, we were told that Kevin already had a history of this sort of thing happening, but without any substantial evidence, they couldn't can him. We did, and it was more than enough, along with the paper trail stacked against him, to get his butt fired. Again, this happened just today, so I'm feeling a mix of anxiety, joy, and some sadness for Kevin. In some misguided way, I know he was just trying to do his job, but I just wish he could have handled things better. Anyways, thanks for reading, guys, and have a good one. TLDR, a manager wanted our department to replace devices we didn't have accountability for, and after informing him of our policies, he then proceeded to berate me, which led to him getting fired. Factory security supervisor gets destroyed. When I first started working for security a decade ago, I was a bright-eyed and prim and proper employee who believed that the only way to be a proper man was to be a company man through and through. My dad ignored his family to be a company man, and while I hated him, I figured I could emulate him till I had made it big and then tone it down when I wanted to start a family. I'm now 29 and have no family, boyfriend, girlfriend, and am still a company man. Just for a few companies at the same time as a security operator and a consultant. Imagine a much less badass and non-criminal version of Mike Ehrmantraut from Breaking Bad, but with beautiful head of definitely not graying hair. Okay, it's graying and thinning. Shut up. That's the only thing I'm sensitive about. I signed on to a private corporation private security force at age 18. In hindsight, we were a PMC who never left the property. Firearms, Hummers, and all the fun toys to play with you could imagine. My boss was an a-hole though. No matter how good you did at your job, he would complain about something you were doing and threaten to write you up. He almost never followed through unless it was about firearms discharge. One night though, I get called in after I had already worked my 12-hour shift. After about a week, a dumbass coworker who did AM lockbox operations commented that I had organized the lockbox by name and department to my boss. That is the first thing to tell me he wasn't very bright. I had brought brass circular key tags that I personally punched with the initials of every employee and the first letters of their department in my off hours. For example, A1S would be Alexander 1220 Security, or CLH would be Cleaning Lady Housekeeping, or MCR would be Malicious Compliance Reddit. I was written up and essentially had my hours cut in half for altering key sets and assigning sets to workers, which was not one of my assigned duties despite being the PM keybox operator more often than not. I was merely to open the key boxes for employees when I was radioed that someone was arriving on site, and then close it in patrol. It was my boss's job to alter keys or to assign them to individuals, something he never once did. So I spent the better part of an hour taking these brass tags off the key rings and back into the giant key box for all departments and their 80 or so employees / spare rings, tossing them on hooks in a random order so my boss would have to come in and organize them. My boss did not. As I was leaving, he snidely smirked and yelled from his office, "You don't get to assign keys to employees, new guy. Maybe after you have a year under your belt, I might trust you to get my coffee." I go home for a good old-fashioned cry out of frustration, hatred, rage, and humiliation, but eventually I decided that it was fine. I would get him fired or get fired trying. The worst that would happen is that I get unemployment while looking for a new job. Things changed though, because after that day, when employees came up to the security offices to get their key rings, I would open up the lockbox and let them grab whichever set they wanted. When asked why they had to grab their own instead of being handed one, I would proudly shout out, "New orders, sir or ma'am. We open it for registered workers, but we don't give them out." Other guards followed suit, because everyone's a gossip, especially security, and heard what happened to me about getting written up, hours cut for assigning key rings. This goes on for about 2 weeks with minor inconveniences, housekeeping calling us to unlock the garages and closets, maintenance calling us to unlock roof access, lots of stupid busy work that didn't happen when we were checking the keys before giving them out or during the 1 week we had the brass tags. Each ring has different types of keys based on what type of employee you were / what you needed access to. Factory workers didn't have office keys. Office workers didn't have factory keys. Only maintenance had roof access. Housekeeping had keys to storage garages and cleaning closets. Security had master keys. A criminal in maintenance notices this fact and he does what criminals do. One day during my shift, he chose a security key ring. I'm not paying any attention after all. I don't assign keys to employees. This criminal ends up stealing a vehicle and a large amount of product worth over $100,000 before he is caught. He's on camera all over the site doing various petty crimes too. But no one cared about the maintenance guy doing nature potty or fucking the hot temp in the office like he has for the past month. To us guards, the latter was free porn that we would break up after completion, until it turns out that stuff's missing about 2 or so weeks later when inventory's done. Criminals get arrested for grand theft because he had stolen good in his lockers that was enough to get a search warrant for his home, but we don't recover the vehicle and over half the stolen product. Here comes the fun part for those who suffered through my first Reddit post and edit of said post. I get called back into work 2 or 3 hours after my 12-hour shift again. I arrive in uniform, giant thermos of coffee in one hand and sight phone in the other. I'm escorted by 2 other guards to a boardroom in the main office just off of the factory. Inside is an HR woman, the CEO, my boss, and a cardboard box filled with everything in my locker. Flashlights, 18650 batteries, cartoons of cigarettes, lighters, duty belt, sidearm baton, cuffs, personal firearm, ammo, phone chargers, and miscellaneous work things. You can start to see where this is going, and the wheel is spinning full speed in my head. At this meeting, I get chewed out 6 ways from Sunday by my boss about my negligence, and how my negligence caused other guards to shirk their duties and act with negligence, causing theft to be possible. While I'm not criminally or civilly liable, I'm no longer going to be able to work in security ever again. He will make sure of that. That is all, with HR frantically trying to correct him and placate me to cover their asses from a wrongful termination lawsuit. I just sit there calmly and let this go on with a self-satisfied smirk on my face, waiting for my time to shine on this exit interview. I knew my time to shine had finally come, and my moment of revenge would soon be upon me. Finally, after what feels like forever, my boss stops fouting his fat lips and the CEO starts. I have a few questions. Why'd you stop caring? In your few months here, you were constantly finding ways to improve security. There are email chains about concerns you had, blind spots in the cameras, redundant systems, and even piggybacking. Your file showed you took great pride in your work, and the GPS on the site phone issued to you shows you still have some of the best patrol coverage. Most people in the other departments have good things to say about you. You were fitting in well here and could have potentially been promoted to site manager of security in a few years if you hadn't given up. So why'd you stop caring and allow this to happen? What changed in that office? My smirk drops into a predatory grin, the shark that has smelt blood in the water. I ask HR, do you have my employment file so we could take a look at what happened a few weeks ago? HR leaves and comes back with my entire file, which is surprisingly large for only being there 6 months so far. Certs, degrees, monthly corporate training modules, weekly range qualifications, ammo inventory and requests, DARs, incident reports, use of force reports, all that good stuff. I pull out my site phone and ask to connect to the CEO's laptop. He tentatively agrees. I transfer over 4 photos to the laptop before giving the site phone with the password disabled and laptop to him. 1 picture of the keybox pre-tags. 1 picture of the keybox during my tags. 1 picture of the write-up. 1 picture of the keybox post-tags. I then turn and look at my boss and say, Camera 7, 0923, February 5th, 2008. If we watch the footage, we can hear you give my new orders in the hallway outside your office. After all, you did tell me not to assign keys and open the lockbox for employees. I had no idea that those orders would cause this debacle. The HR rep goes through my files and finds the write-up and shows it in full to the CEO, while the CEO punches in the date and time to the camera. I watched that recording every day in range and knew it by heart. It was a hallway PTZ camera. After the video finishes, I slowly reach into the box of my personal effects and show them the nearly 80 brass tags labeled with the initials and divisions, the tags labeled spare, division, as well as the 200 blank ones. I was asked to leave the room, followed by a furious CEO/frightened HR woman, while my boss paled, and this time instead of malicious compliance, I happily complied, knowing my malicious compliance is going along well with surgical precision. Fact is, I knew someone would break or steal or enter an area off limits because they had access, and that means they had to see what was hidden behind the different departments. I never expected the size or scale of the theft, though. Nearly 30 minutes later, my boss was leaving the office with an empty box and his severance pay. The dumbass who worked opposite of me was promoted. Turns out he had mentioned it to the boss because of how much easier things had been since the new guy, aka me, organized the box. The company gave me a bonus as well as buying the tags off of me. I kept my job there, and dumbass got to spend an hour reorganizing the lockbox with what was now the company's new brass tags. Ended up leaving on good terms 8 months later when someone else offered me safer work closer to my home for slightly less pay. Company names and products have been kept vague on purpose. I'm under an NDA agreement. No names, locations, countries, or hints will be given. I have carefully checked over my NDA while I typed this to make sure I follow it to the word. I still happily work in security and don't want to be blackballed from my industry. Though I'm happy to report I no longer do anything resembling PMCs. For those who may be curious, my personal sidearm I kept at work in my locker was a Beretta PX4 Storm, but the standard issue was a 1911. Not sure the maker, but my uniform fee would be reduced if I provided my own sidearm, so I used my own, same with the duty belt and gear. And the assigned rifle I eventually purchased after I left was an FN PS90, the civilian legal variant of the P90. I refer to the opposite shift associate as dumbass because he was an idiot. He commonly broke keys, damaged vehicles, forgot to charge toys and equipment, and ended up shooting himself in the foot a few years after I left with his rifle when it got caught on his keyring and misfired. Freak accident, but with everything else, I doubt his intelligence. Decent manager, put in a suggestion box, anonymous, and maintenance took care of most of the pressing concerns while petitioning HR and corporate for the less pressing issues. Especially since all he really did was install a box in Notepad and have maintenance do all the work. They probably built and installed the box. TLDR, I improved a company's organizational systems and was forced to take down my improvements, directly causing the company to be victimized. All the poorly worded orders from my manager, causing him to be fired and me to get a bonus. And there you have it, folks, the end of the epics. If you like these stories, be sure to leave a like as well as subscribe with notifications turned on, that way you could stay up to date with all the latest and greatest here on the channel. As always, my name's Ryan, the official host here on Reddit Voice, and I look forward to seeing you guys in tomorrow's video.